Chapter 58. A Handful of Precious Earth. One day, while out begging in a poor hamlet, the Buddha met some children playing on a dirt path. They were building a city from dirt and sand, complete with a city wall, storehouse, dwellings, and even a river. When the children saw the Buddha and the bhikkhus approaching, one child said to the other, "The Buddha and the bhikkhus are traveling past our city. It's only proper for us to make an offering to them." The other children liked the idea, but said, "What do we have to offer the Buddha? We are only children." The first child answered, "Listen, my friends, there are great reserves of harvested rice in the storehouse of our city of dirt and sand. We can offer some of it to the Buddha." The other children clapped their hands in delight. They dug out a handful of dirt from their storehouse and pretended it was rice. They placed it on a leaf. The first child lifted the leaf onto his two hands and knelt respectfully before the Buddha. The other children knelt beside him. He said, "The people of our city respectfully offer this rice from our storehouse. We pray you will accept it." The Buddha smiled. He patted the boy on the head and said, "Thank you, children, for offering this precious rice to us. You are most thoughtful." The Buddha turned to Ananda and said, "Ananda, please take this offering, and as soon as we return to the monastery, we can mix it with water and daub it on the earthen bricks of my hut." Ananda took the handful of earth. The children invited the Buddha to sit with them on a large rock beneath a nearby banyan tree. Ananda and the other bhikkhus gathered around too. The Buddha told the children a story. Many lives ago, there lived a prince named Visvantara. He was a very generous and kind-hearted man. He always shared with the poor and needy, never hesitating to part with anything he owned. His wife, Madri, was equally generous. She knew how much pleasure it gave her husband to help others, and she never expressed any regret about the things he gave away. They had a son named Jalin and a daughter named Krishnajina. During a famine, Visvantara asked his father's permission to distribute rice and cloth from the imperial stores to the poor. The king consented. So great was the people's need that the stores were nearly exhausted. This caused alarm to a number of imperial advisors. They wanted to devise a scheme that would prevent the prince from giving away any more. First, they told the king that the prince's indiscriminate giving would ruin the kingdom. They revealed that the prince had given away one of the treasured imperial elephants. At this, even the king grew alarmed. He allowed his ministers to talk him into banishing his only son to the remote mountains of Jayatura, where the prince would experience firsthand the hardships of a simple life. Thus Visvantara, Madri, and the two children were sent into exile. On their journey to the mountains, they met a poor beggar. The prince removed his fine jacket and gave it to the man. When they encountered more poor people, Madri removed her own fine jacket and gave it to them. Before long, Jalin and Krishnajina had given away their jackets as well. The family also gave away their jewels and ornaments to needy people along the route. Before they reached the mountains, they'd given away everything they owned that could be traded for food. At last the prince gave away even their carriage and 2 horses. The prince carried Jalin, and Madri lifted Krishnajina into her arms. Without regrets, they walked until they reached Jayatura. They walked and sang as though they didn't have a care in the world. Their hearts felt light and free. It was a long trek, and Visvantara and Madri's feet were swollen and bloody by the time they made it to the remote mountains. They were lucky to find an abandoned hut on the mountain slope. The hut had once belonged to a hermit. They swept and tidied the hut and gathered leafy branches to make beds. In the forest they found an ample supply of wild fruits and greens to eat. The children learned how to gather food, wash clothes in a mountain spring, sow seeds, and to tend a garden. The prince and his wife taught the children how to read and write, using large leaves for paper and thorns for pens. Although their life was difficult, they were content. For 3 years they lived in peace. But then one day, when Prince Visvantara and Madri were out gathering fruit deep in the forest, a stranger came and kidnapped the children. The prince and his wife searched for many days throughout the forest and in nearby villages, but they could not find a trace of their beloved children. Finally, exhausted and discouraged, they returned to their hut, hoping against hope that the children might have returned there on their own. Instead, they were surprised to meet one of the king's messengers waiting for them. They were greatly relieved when he informed them that Jalin and Krishnajina were safe at the palace with the king. When they asked how the children came to be there, the messenger explains, "Several days ago, one of the palace ladies saw the children being sold in a market in the capital. She recognized them as your children, and she quickly returned to the palace to inform her husband, a royal advisor. He ran to the market and told the merchant to take the children to the palace, where he could be assured of receiving a handsome price for them." The king recognized his grandchildren, even with their tattered clothes and soiled faces. He realized how deeply he missed you and your family. The king asked, "Where did you find these children? How much are you selling them for?" Before the merchant could respond, the royal advisor spoke. "Your Majesty, the girl is being sold for 1,000 pieces of gold and 1,000 cattle. The price for the boy is 100 pounds of gold and 100 cattle." Everyone, including the merchant and the children, was surprised to hear these words. The king asked, "Why is the girl so much more expensive than the boy?" The royal advisor replied, "You clearly value girls more than boys. You never scold or punish the princesses for any indulgences. Even the palace servant girls are treated with kindness and respect by you. You have only one son, and yet you exiled him to a remote mountain region where tigers and leopards roam, and when there is nothing but wild fruit to eat. Surely you value girls more than boys." The king was moved to tears. "Please say no more. I understand your meaning." The king learned from the merchant that he had bought the children from another man in the mountains. The king paid the merchant and then ordered him to lead the imperial police to the kidnapper. The king embraced his 2 grandchildren and asked them about their life in the mountains. He issued orders for his son and daughter-in-law to be allowed to return to the capital. From then on, the king cherished his son and generously assisted in the son's efforts to relieve the suffering of the poor. The children liked the Buddha's story very much. The Buddha smiled at them and said, "Prince Visvantara was happy to share all he owned with others. Today you shared a handful of precious earth from your city's storehouses with me. You've made me very happy. You can make others happy by offering them some small gift each day. It doesn't have to be something you buy. When you pick a flower by the rice fields and offer it to your parents, you make them happy. A word of thanks or love can also be a precious gift. A kind look or a small gesture of caring brings happiness to others. Offer such gifts every day to your family and friends. The bhikkhus and I must go now, but we will always remember the fine offering that you made today. The children promised they would invite more friends and go and visit the Buddha and the bhikkhus at Jetavana. They wanted to hear more stories. The next summer, the Buddha returned to Rajgaha to teach. Afterwards, he went to Vulture Peak. Jivaka paid him a visit and invited him to spend a few days at the mangrove grove. The Buddha accepted the invitation, and Ananda joined him. The physician's mango grove was cool and refreshing. The trees were in their 8th year of bearing fruit. Jivaka readied a small hut for the Buddha and prepared vegetarian dishes for him each day. He suggested that the Buddha rest from begging for a few days in order to rebuild his strength. He also prepared a herbal tonic for the Buddha, made from roots, leaves, and fruits. One day as they sat together, Jivaka said, "Lord, some people say you let bhikkhus eat meat. They claim that Gautama tolerates the killing of animals to feed himself and his students. Some even make wild accusations that Gautama requires people to offer meat to the Sangha. I know these things are not true, but I would appreciate your thoughts on these matters." The Buddha replied, "Jivaka, people do not speak the truth when they say I allow animals to be killed to provide food for myself and the bhikkhus. I have in fact spoken on this matter a number of times. If a bhikkhu sees someone killing an animal for the purpose of offering it as food to the bhikkhu must refuse it. Even if he doesn't actually see the animal being killed, but is told that it was killed on his behalf, he must refuse it. Furthermore, if he merely suspects that it may have been killed on his behalf, he must refuse it. Jivaka, according to the practice of begging, the bhikkhu accepts whatever is offered, unless an animal has been killed on the bhikkhu's behalf. People who understand the bhikkhu's vows of compassion offer only vegetarian food to the monks. But sometimes a person only has food that's been prepared with meat. Also, people who have not had previous contact with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha do not know that bhikkhus prefer vegetarian food. In such situations, the bhikkhu accepts whatever is offered to avoid offending the giver and to create the opportunity for contact so the person may learn about the path of liberation. Jivaka, someday all people will understand that bhikkhus do not want animals to be killed. At that time, no one will offer meat to the bhikkhus, and the bhikkhus will be able to eat only vegetarian food." Jivaka said, "I believe that a vegetarian diet promotes better health. One feels lighter and less prone to illness. I've been a vegetarian for 10 years now. It's good for the health and for nurturing a heart of compassion. I am happy, Lord, for receiving your clear teaching about this." Jivaka also commended the Sangha's practice of being careful not to eat meat left over from the previous day. Food kept overnight could spoil and cause illness. The Buddha thanked Jivaka and invited him to come to the monastery to speak to the monks again about basic sanitary practices. Chapter 59. The Net of Theories. Jivaka's mango grove was tranquil and spacious. Scattered throughout the orchard were small huts for the bhikkhunis. One evening, a bhikkhuni named Subha came to discuss a problem with the Buddha. She had completed her begging and was returning to the mangrove grove by way of a deserted street when suddenly a young man appeared and stood in her way. She sensed his dishonourable intentions and began to observe her breath in order to remain calm and clear-headed. She looked directly into his eyes and said, "Sir, I am a nun who follows the way of the Buddha. Please move out of my way so that I may return to my nunnery." The man said, "You are still young and very pretty. Why waste your life by shaving your head and wearing yellow robes? Why live like an ascetic? Listen, miss, your lovely body should be clad in a silk sari from Kasi. Why, I have never seen a woman as pretty as you. Please let me show you the pleasures of the body. Come with me." Subha remained calm. "Do not speak foolishly. I seek my happiness in a life of liberation and enlightenment. The 5 categories of desire only lead to suffering. Allow me to pass. I will be grateful for your understanding." But the man refused. "Your eyes are so beautiful. I've never seen such beautiful eyes. Don't think I'm foolish enough to let you go. You will come with me." He reached out to grab her, but Sabha stepped out of reach and said, "Sir, do not touch me. You must not violate a nun." Because I was weary of a life burdened with craving and hatred, I chose the life of spiritual practice. You say my eyes are beautiful. Very well, I will pluck them out and give them to you. Better to be blind than to be violated by you. Saba's voice was full of determination. The man flinched. He knew that she was capable of doing what she said. He stepped back. Saba continued, "Don't let your desires cause you to commit crimes. Don't you know that King Bimbisara has issued a decree that anyone who harms a member of the Buddha's Sangha will be dealt with severely? If you do not behave properly, if you threaten my chastity or my life, you will be arrested and punished." Suddenly the young man came to his senses. He saw how blind passion can lead to suffering. He stepped out of the nun's way to let her pass. He called after her, "Please forgive me, sister. I hope you attain your goal on the spiritual path." Subha walked on, without looking back. The Buddha praised the young nun for her courage and clarity. He said it is dangerous for nuns to walk alone on deserted paths. That is one of the reasons I hesitated initially to ordain women. Subha, from now on, no bhikkhuni should travel alone. Whether crossing a river, entering a village to beg, walking through a field or a forest, no bhikkhuni should walk alone. No bhikkhuni should sleep alone either. When she sleeps in a nunnery, a small hut, or beneath a tree, no bhikkhuni should sleep by herself. She should always travel and sleep with at least one other bhikkhuni, so they can watch out for each other and protect each other. The Buddha turned to Ananda and instructed him, "Ananda, please make careful note of this new rule. Request all the bhikkhuni elders to place this new rule in their precepts." When the Buddha departed from Jivaka's mangrove grove, he went to Nalanda, accompanied by a large number of bhikkhus. They walked slowly and mindfully. Each bhikkhu observed his breath. Behind the bhikkhus travelled 2 ascetics, Supiya and his disciple Brahmadatta. They spoke in loud voices about the Buddha and his teaching. Supiya criticized and ridiculed the Buddha. Oddly enough, his disciple countered the statements by commending the Buddha and his teaching. The disciple spoke eloquently and convincingly to his teacher, moving the bhikkhus who could not help but hear the conversation going on behind him. That evening, the bhikkhus stopped to rest at Amabalatatika, a lush forest that belonged to the royal family. King Bimbisara had announced to all spiritual seekers from all sects could use Ambalatatika to rest in whenever they needed. Supiyo and Brahmadatta rested the night there too. The next morning, the bhikkhus discussed among themselves the conversation between the two ascetics. The Buddha heard them and said, "Bhikkhus, whenever you hear someone criticize or ridicule me or the Dharma, do not give rise to feelings of anger, irritation, or indignation. Such feelings can only harm yourselves. Whenever you hear someone praise me or the Dharma, do not give rise to feelings of happiness, pleasure, or satisfaction. That too will only harm yourselves. The correct attitude is to examine the criticism to see what parts may be true and what parts are not true. Only by doing that will you have a chance to further your studies and make real progress." Bhikkhus, most people who praise the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha possess only superficial understanding. They appreciate how the bhikkhus lead chaste, simple, and serene lives, but they do not see beyond that. Those who have grasped the most subtle and profound depths of the Dharma speak few words of praise. They understand the true wisdom of enlightenment. Such wisdom is profound, sublime, and marvelous. It transcends all ordinary thoughts and words. Bhikkhus, there are countless philosophies, doctrines, and theories in this world. People criticize each other and argue endlessly over their theories. According to my investigation, there are 62 main theories which underlie the thousands of philosophies and religions current in our world. Looked at from the way of enlightenment and emancipation, all 62 of these theories contain errors and create obstacles. The Buddha proceeded to explain the 62 theories and expose their errors. He spoke on the 18 theories concerning the past, 4 theories of eternalism, 4 theories of partial eternalism, 4 theories of finitude and infinity of the world, 4 theories of endless equivocation, and 2 theories that claim that causality does not exist. He spoke about the 44 theories that concern the future, 16 that allege the soul lives on after death, 8 that say there is no soul after death, 8 that posit that there is neither a soul that continues after death nor ceases to continue after death, 7 nihilistic theories, and 5 theories that say the present is already nirvana. After exposing the errors contained in these theories, the Buddha said, "A good fisherman places his net in the water and catches all the shrimp and fish he can. As he watches the creatures leap out of the net, he tells them, 'No matter how high you jump, you will only land in the net again.' He is correct. The thousands of beliefs flourishing at present can all be found in the net of these 62 theories. Bhikkhus, don't fall into that bewitching net. You will only waste time and lose your chance to practice the way of enlightenment. Don't fall into the net of mere speculation." Bhikkhus, all these beliefs and doctrines have arisen because people have been led astray by their perceptions and feelings. When mindfulness is not practiced, it is impossible to see the true nature of perceptions and feelings. When you can penetrate the roots and see the true nature of your perceptions and feelings, you will see the impermanent and interdependent nature of all dharmas. You will no longer be caught in the net of desire, anxiety, and fear, or the net of the 62 false theories. After the Dharma talk, Venerable Ananda took a walk and focused his attention on recalling every word the Buddha spoke. He thought, "This is an important sutra. I will call it the Brahmajala Sutta, the Sutra of the Great Net. This net collects all the false theories and dogmas in the world.